Welcome to Postwave.
You're here with Trevor and Eric and Matt.
How's it going?
So today we're going to be talking about Spectralism, which is this movement within contemporary classical music that started in the 70s or so, and kind of microtonality in general.
Well, before we jump into spectralism, maybe Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Matt Flores. I'm good friends with Trevor, who kind of introduced me into this whole new age music. Yeah, I guess you'd call it. Yeah. but
yeah, man. Let's burn some sage.
I'm pretty new age.
Yeah, that's definitely very true. But yeah, I met Trevor in high school, and we've been playing music ever since.
Yep.
I'm a trombonist, so it's good stuff. Yeah.
Brass
section.
Buddies.
Heck yeah.
All right, I see how it is. Fun. So Matt, how did you get into music?
Well, so originally, my cousin played saxophone, and when I started music, that's kind of what I want to do. Everybody wants to play saxophone. That's like the biggest rage ever. And
Third sexiest instrument.
yeah,
Sure.
of course.
Third sexiest. What's number 1 and 2?
I think guitar and piano.
Maybe
violin.
Guitar's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute that you threw piano in there.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a poll going around on Facebook. I don't know how accurate it was.
Clearly.
Yeah, this
clearly.
little, the surveying poll was a little weak, you know.
Biased.
Yeah. And then I sucked at saxophone, and so then I wanted to play
You're
trumpet.
supposed to blow.
And then I thought, so my dad played trumpet, so I wanted to go with that. But then I ended up settling with trombone, and have been playing that ever since. I did my undergrad at Texas State, and then went up to New York to Ithaca College, where I did my master's, and that was a really fun time. It was really cold, but glad to be back in Austin, doing the thing, teaching, playing. You know.
Cool. So you're teaching and playing. You're like a professional trombonist now.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, didn't you you started working at like a couple music schools,
Right. I guess I can plug. So I teach at the Austin School of Music, Bach to Rock, and a couple high schools in the area. So yeah,
Awesome.
excited to get started. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Nice.
And music wise, do a little bit of everything. Classical, jazz, Latin. With Trevor, sometimes we would just get together and just like jam for hours with like crazy synth, like keyboard, like just pushing buttons and just
Live processing.
Yeah, we would take songs. We would take like something like really like a classical tune or hymn, and then just like slowly just transition it into like chaos and see if we could bring it back or change it. Yeah, that's
beautiful.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Matt, do you remember like the first time you heard anything that was microtonal or like alternate tuning system based?
Yeah, I think it must have been either late high school, early college. And I think I totally just remember trying not to just laugh in my seat. Just 'cause, like, I don't know, like it can be definitely different if your ears are trained of just sort of the normal, what we normally get. But over the years, like all that cookie cutter stuff kind of gets, cookie cutter, and then you're like, I want some burnt cookies, and so you start listening to different things, like different types of music, and yeah, it slowly your taste like kind of like it becomes more palatable. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, it's just, the Western biases just kind of leak out the more time you give it.
Definitely.
Do y'all think that if like you raised a kid with listening to either like only atonal music or only like microtonal music, the kid would grow up and just be like, oh yeah, that's that's normal?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, we can see that verifiably in different cultures that have different microtonal tuning systems as their standard tuning system, and then that just sounds good to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess the question is, does that extend to like arbitrary levels of dissonance and like complexity?
Is there an upper limit to how much screeching we can endure?
Right. I don't know.
I want to say no. I mean, if you consider bands like Anal Cunt.
Yeah.
Or like Melt Banana.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be a point where you're just like, maybe not. Like,
but there's someone out there who's into
there's
it.
a genre. Yeah.
Or even just like, to some people, heavy metal just seems like the most horrible, god-awful racket. I think it's all subjective.
Yeah, it's totally true.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I started trying to listen to music with harsh vocals, my problem was that it all sounded the same. It's like it all sounds like screechy white noise, but then the more you like, if you start actually listening to different bands and different vocalists, like they all sound the same in the beginning, but then after you listen for a while, you can start to hear the differences.
Right.
Which is really cool, and I feel like that was kind of the point where I started to like it more.
Yeah,
like,
awesome.
oh, I actually just don't like this vocalist, but I like this other vocalist who's doing
this better or that better.
Also
yeah.
harsh vocals.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess when you have just more than one reference, you can really start to compare and contrast and, see what you like and what you don't.
Yeah. So, what is spectralism?
Oh, Trevor, I'll let you take that one a little bit, and I'll kind of throw in bits here and there,
So, I mean, it's like a lot of the isms, it's one of those things that's been, as soon as someone coins it, everyone's like, no, this isn't a thing, and it's not what you think it is. But a lot of the music that falls under that category is based on either the harmonic series or long durations and very slowly changing textures, and it focuses a lot on what people call liminal spaces. So like the spaces that are like in between different areas of music. So like for example, rhythm and pitch are actually the same thing, because if you have a rhythm that's below 20 hertz, which is the lowest range of our hearing, you're going to hear it as like a beat. But if it gets higher than 20 hertz, you're going to start to hear a pitch, but there's not like a definite, it's like around 20 hertz, but that would be an example of a liminal space, is like that area where rhythm starts to become pitch. And there's also the fact that harmony is also continuous with timbre. So like when you hear like a trombone or especially like a wind or a string instrument playing a single note, it's there's a rich spectra of different frequencies you're hearing, but you perceive only one frequency, but there's actually a bunch of different components that make it up. And composers like Gerard Grisey have like orchestrated those different pitches so that it kind of fades in and out of sounding like a unified timbre and sounding like a bunch of different notes happening.
Right.
Super cool.
I'm skimming through the works on Grisey, and one of the things, there's a bullet point that's really nice to kind of it's one of the ones that really caught me was treating sound as like a living organism. It's just like a really unique statement.
Yeah, spectralism, like I feel like is way more organic than, I mean, maybe any other, I mean, like,
yeah,
definitely serialism, but also I would say like tonality.
What makes it organic?
Well, the fact, like, I think this is one of the things Tristan Murray talks about in, what's the name of the article? In this article, The Revolution of Complex Sounds.
Gotcha.
That, like, in tonal music and serialism, the musical atom is like a note, like that's the smallest you can get. But in spectral music, it's like the smallest atom is like the percept, like, of the listener, at, you know, whatever infinitesimal fraction of a second that is. And that's way more organic than like dividing things into a grid of notes.
Okay, fascinating. So that that serialism, as in the article that we reference, is the what was the word they said? The getting rid of a tone, right? What?
An atom?
Breaking it down into like the most finite property.
Yeah, that it's rooted in time rather than in tone. There's a better way to say that, but I forget how they say it.
Well, I think that's like rhythm is. I mean, I guess, you know, rhythm could be one of the ways that makes things more organic. Is just like this sort of pulse that is generated even at like these frequencies that, you know, the hertz that we can't even hear. You know, just like there's like rhythms baked into these tones that we hear, so it's like it then eventually comes back full circle with rhythm being added in the music itself. So it's kind of really interesting how that happens.
So how does rhythm relate to harmony?
So it's along with the rhythm being continuous with pitch thing, you can think of harmonies as basically being just really, really fast polyrhythms. There's a video we should link to of Adam Neely giving like a talk, but he has like a 3 against 4 against 5 like drum beat in Ableton, and he just turns the speed up and it becomes like a major chord.
That's
yeah.
Oh yeah,
it's the ratio of the rhythms.
I guess you could say like the rhythms of the hertz eventually create the sound.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the frequency of the wave.
Yeah, there's a quote from the program notes of Vortex Temporum by Grisey that relates to this. This is a Google translated from French, so there was a little bit of wonkiness in it, but it says, in Vortex Temporum, the 3 aforementioned archetypes will circulate from one movement to another in time constants, as different as that of men, time of language and breathing, that of whales, spectral time of the rhythm of sleep, and that of birds or insects, the contracted to the extreme where the outlines fade. Thus, thanks to this imaginary microscope, a note becomes timbre, a chord becomes spectral complex, and a rhythm a swell of unpredictable durations.
Yeah, the first part kind of sounded like gobbledygook. Yeah, I mean, we could have a interesting sidebar on like the inability of language to describe music and like.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Because like, I'm sure y'all like read like program notes or like, you know, album reviews where it's just like I gained literally nothing from this description.
Yeah, it's just
like what is this supposed to sound like?
like
I feel like that's like more often than not.
Yeah, because if you could relate the idea in the form of a couple paragraphs, then you wouldn't need the album or the piece of music.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. Like, music can be thought of as like a universal language, but language can somehow not really contextualize some of the context of music. You know, contextualize the context. I guess. I'll stick with it.
Yeah, music as universal language is a whole can of worms.
Yeah. Well, as we touched on in our music episode, I am convinced that music is the concept of language.
Yeah, I mean, it's like maybe one of the most like abstract versions of language.
Or rather that it's not like a language, but it's that it is language, you know? Because each individual piece is like its own language that obeys its own laws, its own guiding principles that create logic and convey ideas and sensations in the same way that spoken languages do the same. And that it's an internal logic system, so that it's related to itself, and that if you engage with it with an open mind, then you can derive the meaning from it without any external information.
Yeah,
that's nice. Yeah.
Thanks.
There's a lot to unpack in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's unpack it.
I mean, it's interesting because obviously, like, there's a lot of how you interpret music has to do with your culture.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like a major chord being happy and a minor chord being sad. Even though there's lots of like Jewish music that's in a minor key that's supposed to sound happy,
right?
And that kind of thing. But yeah, at some level, certain things in music are certain things in music are hard to like misinterpret, I think.
Well, isn't it? I might be wrong, but isn't it true that like I guess the pentatonic scale is like one of the scales that have been discovered by like sort of peoples all around the world, like in like all different countries, like without any sort of overlap. This is like one of the scales that has come forth.
Yeah, indigenous
like
peoples of the North America, Asian cultures.
It's just kind of interesting how it's just like totally separate from thousands of miles, yet this is, you know, I mean, actually there might be more to that, but I don't know.
I mean, it could have been like discovered very early in Africa and then kind of, you know, proliferated and changed a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think part of what makes the pentatonic scale special is that like all the there's no avoid notes as you would say in jazz theory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So like it like it sounds good in like any combination, basically.
And why do you think that is? Is it more closely related to the basic relationships, harmonic relationships?
That's a good question. I mean, not necessarily. I mean,
I think there's a simplicity into it that kind of, I guess due to its limited size, you're able to, that I guess due to its sort of like shaved down nature of what it is, you can do only so much with it, and so it's kind of like just exactly what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess there's no half steps is
Right.
the thing.
Mm.
Yeah, which would be the most dissonant interval.
So that it's closer down on the harmonic series, the relationship between the pitches.
Right.
Which would be central to spectralism is the
Oh.
idea that, bringing it back, that the organizing principles are derived directly from the physics of sound.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which you can kind of say about tonality, but spectralism kind of goes a step further back from that and like takes away some of the limitations, and that it can still define consonances in a similar way.
Tell me more
Mm.
about that.
So I mean, like kind of like we were saying, like intervals that have like simpler ratios between the frequencies, like lower whole numbers, will sound more pleasing to our ear.
Mm.
Okay.
And not to get too poetic, but like I just find that profoundly beautiful, that like our brain is able to perceive mathematical beauty just like without even thinking about it.
Yeah, whoa, back up on the poetry,
Hey.
Trevor. Too much. It's too much
All right.
poetry.
All right. Yeah.
That's spot on.
It was pretty cute. Yeah.
But it's also like I find it amazing that the natural chord that produces is like a dominant 7 sharp 11 chord.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. And like that the dominant chord in tonality is like perceived as just so dissonant that it like has to resolve.
Yeah.
Like that's like the driving force of tonality, is that the dominant chord has to resolve.
Wow.
But
Yeah. Where
do you
would
think?
where would the one be
Well,
without the dominant?
Yeah. This may be reading way too deep into it, but do you think that could be related to the nature of reality, in which things exist where they could not exist, or rather where there could be non-existence, there is existence, and so it's this artifice that sort of emerged out of nothing, that is all of existence, just floating amid the void. And so like that is what it is, and that in existence there's this striving for what's the word, homeostasis. There's a striving for homeostasis, where it always wants to return to the original state. And if the original state is nothingness, then the dominant 7, representing presence, would want to resolve away from itself.
wow.
So
I mean, I don't know. Is there something there?
Could be. It could be, or it could not be. It could, like, it's that is one of those things. It's like the cat in the box. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But we'll never know. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
I do think I guess nature and patterns and organisms, there do seem to be sort of balances and things in check. So, to have a tonic, you would need a dominant to bring that out. And I think that, I guess, sort of reflected in spectralism, you can see sort of the harmony of music, sort of both sides of it that make a whole to it, to where you can get tension and release and what have you. But just sort of like you would need both sides to have one.
So how does spectralism achieve the duality between tension and release?
I think so. A lot of spectralism, from what I've listened to from sort of the clips given, they tend to be like really dwell and really saturate the tones given, and so like it may be tension at first, I guess, of what your mind, what I originally perceived as tension and sort of these shifting tones, but it is sort of very organic, and to where the more you listen to it, that the tension that you originally thought was there may not necessarily be there, but like sort of parts of overall concepts of the piece.
Okay, fascinating. So it's the by being so ardently present and stationary in these tonalities, that the tension arises within the listener as the piece remains static.
Right.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it really forces you to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know though. For me, I mentioned this before, but I still, whenever I listen to spectral music, I am just brought into a state of consciousness where I take a nap. It's wonderful. It brings me into a really transcendent, restful kind of trance-like nap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just something like about just like letting these tones like really just sit with you. Like my girlfriend listens to a lot of those 420 hertz, 3-hour loop thing, and I don't know, but I don't know. It's just, yeah, I guess sort of like we said before, as the music remains constant and as these tones really sink in, your consciousness and your whatever you're thinking of or whatever is allowed to sort of use the tones presented with the music, and you're allowed to and kind of interpret it in, I guess, whatever state of mind you're feeling, and it can be either pleasing or, I mean, most often pleasing, but it sort of allows it as like a canvas for you to then, a canvas for your mind.
Yeah, it reminds me of something my old teacher Hunter Ewan said one time, which was that in like music that's not minimalistic, like the music changes, and that's kind of the point, is to appreciate the change. But with minimalism, like the music stays the same and you change.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really deep. And yeah, I mean, minimalism and spectralism, they're not like, I don't know how like directly they were related, but there is this one piece, the Well-Tuned Piano by Lamont Young. Either of y'all heard of that?
No, I haven't.
I think I actually have.
Okay.
Heard that. Isn't it? It's like a pre-tuned piano, isn't it? Like, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's like 5 hours long, and it's on YouTube actually. If you go look for it, we'll put a link. But yeah, the piano is tuned so that I actually I took some time like a week ago to like make a patch on my keyboard that has that same tuning.
Cool.
But yeah, and you can look up the tuning online, but it's a lot of like harmonic sevenths, so like an exact frequency ratio of 7-1.
Great.
Or I guess 7-4. Yeah. And yeah, it's like 5 hours long. Evolves very, very slowly. I think it was written in the early 60s. But that's one piece in which I feel like minimalism and spectralism kind of come together.
And so, isn't like one other element of spectralism is sort of using like sounds created in nature? Like I'm sort of reading this, and Grisey was influenced a lot by Conlon Noncaro, and I'm reading that he used like sounds made by insects and small creatures.
Mm. Well, in Vortex Temporum, he talks about in the program notes how the three movements are. He starts with some base material, and each of the three movements plays with that base material on a different time scale, akin to different animals. So that the first one, I believe, is like the human scale. The second one is stretched way out, and that's akin to whale song. And then the third one is akin to insects, where it's sped way up, and then that's where you get into that liminal space between rhythm and harmony.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. And so that's all based off the same sort of original note set or grouping of notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
He has some base material that he derived from the simple tones of a sine wave, a square wave, and a sawtooth.
Okay.
And he created those arpeggios and rhythms that you hear in the beginning of the piece to represent those concepts.
Wow. Yeah, nature makes some really, really interesting sounds. I don't know, like it's.
Yeah.
What?
Especially in Texas, we have like the cicadas.
Oh yeah.
Which are just like so fucking loud.
It's really funny. We had a family member over today, and she always associated the sound of cicadas with heat. It was just like automatic. Anytime she heard cicadas, she's like, it's almost like if you could hear the heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
those are pretty freaky bugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the sound output, like per size, is probably just a crazy ratio.
The other day I was lying down on my porch, and I heard this weird buzzy noise. It's a really unusual sound, and I tried recording it, and then I finally found what it was. It was this small bee lying on its back, flapping its wings.
Man, Texas heat, getting them.
Martha's Vineyard heat.
Yeah, Martha. Oh yeah, yeah.
Is it? How's the humidity in Texas?
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's not great. Right now it's really dry, so a lot of stuff is just burning, which is just bad. But yeah, it's pretty hot. Like I walked outside and just saw this beetle just like die, and it was really morbid. It was just like, but all things need water and life. Yeah, so there's that.
Imagine.
But yeah, it's been kind of hot. It was like 105, so
Yeah, it's been super hot here too. But then I was thinking it's probably nothing compared to you guys.
Trevor, what's
What did it?
oh
Yeah, go on.
what's a weird sound like you remember hearing?
Oh gosh.
Your roommate in the next room with his girlfriend.
There's that. I could probably top that if I think about it.
We could cycle that.
Yeah.
That was my roommate with his girlfriend. It was very 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 complex spectra, and
the
transients are just
the partials. Yeah.
Did you applaud when they were done?
I cried. It was just so.
You cried.
It was so beautiful.
Moving, touching.
Wow.
Although I remember when Matt and I
Matinee.
yeah we I guess this would have been in August. Like a few years ago, we went to see the Perseids from Enchanted Rock.
Oh yes.
Just about 2 hours outside of Austin, and we heard the coyotes like howling. That's a pretty amazing sound.
Wow.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty cool sound to do some spectralism with, you know. Maybe for future.
Matt, have you done any composing at all?
Let's see. So in spurts, yeah. Definitely I have, as far as composition goes, I like doing some arranging of different things, and I'm in a couple groups that it's mainly just arranging pop covers. But I don't know. I definitely think composition kind of comes every now and then. Like I feel like I have ideas for stuff, but I think the problem I've had, or I guess maybe it's not a problem. I don't know. Who knows? But it's just like kind of having like one idea, and like it'll be a cool idea or something, but then building an idea off of that idea, you know, or like having that that one thing like evolve without being like something like a loop pedal and just like looping forever. Because like, I mean, looping is really cool. Like, ain't gonna diss the loopers out there, but it's also, you know, making a piece that really changes and is more complex than just, you know, looped.
Yeah, that can be a challenging step. I heard on the radio that someone was playing next door one time a song, and you know the kind of song where they like have a clever hook, like some sentence, and then they say, "Oh, okay, that's enough. We'll just repeat that a bunch."
Yeah.
Guess how many times they repeat. Guess how many times they repeated the last 8 bars.
Oh. 10 times.
10 times? Trevor, do you want to top that?
30.
Well, you're closer. It was 24. A full 24 times repeating the same 8 bars without any variation whatsoever.
Man, sounds like they were on Adderall or something. Yeah.
They're putting the minimalists to shame.
That's right. Just really going for it.
Yeah, circling back to what Matt was saying about like sounds in nature, I like analysis of found sound. I think just in general is a huge thing within spectralism. Eric, that one article you sent me was, talking about Grisey like looking at the spectrum of a bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the other things I think is really amazing about spectralism is that it really could have only happened in the 20s.
Gesundheit.
Careful.
Thank you. One of the other things I find really amazing about spectralism is that it really could have only happened in the 20th century with the technology that we have to analyze sounds and synthesize sounds and record sounds, which I don't think you can really say that about serialism, because like you could have come up with that idea in the 19th century and it would have worked.
Yeah,
but like spectralism, they're just like no.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't the earliest serialism pre-Turing machine?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't necessitate computers.
So is there spectralism without the use of technology? Are there examples of that?
Yeah, well, I guess like I mean there are plenty of like spectral pieces that are acoustic pieces, but just the whole idea of like the timbre being like a spectrum of frequencies, like that whole idea. I'm people knew about like harmonics and stuff before the 20th century, but as far as like being able to see really clearly, like oh, like this instrument has like these different harmonics at these different levels, you know, and you can see like exactly like that's what's creating timbre.
Right.
So that would be really interesting to look into, like
when the shift,
when we first discovered that, because I really
or like who pioneered that.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor, do you have a suggestion for some software to do spectral analysis of sound that is good for being able to tell the volume of each overtone?
Yeah, Sphere is amazing and it's open source. But basically, you can throw any audio file in there, and it'll do what's called a Fourier transform, which is which breaks it up into its component sine waves, because any sound, no matter how complex, can be broken up into just simple sine waves that are, you know, only one frequency at some amplitude, and then you can it'll display each sine wave as like this gray line. And you can edit those gray lines individually and like move them around and time stretch them, and really you can do some really crazy stuff.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, you can manipulate sound at like a very, very granular level.
I'm definitely gonna download this. I've been kind of getting into
yeah
I
need to re-download it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really awesome program. I found that there's some limitations to it in that it doesn't tell you the volume of each of the overtones. You just kind of have to guess based on the intensity of how dark the line is, which is kind of a challenge. And also, it's kind of hard to pick out exactly the frequency that the line is, because like when you click on it, it doesn't tell you. You have to approximate based on the readout of where your cursor is.
Actually, so I did this this new music vocal festival actually almost exactly a year ago, last August, and we did a lot with this software Voce Vista, which is this like spectral analysis software. And that does let you see like specific frequencies and amplitudes, and then you can filter out you know, specific regions, and it's actually really, really wild to like listen to just
range,
you know, a certain region of your voice and like just what those harmonics are doing, and you can see really interesting things happening when you like change vowels and that kind of thing.
Wow.
And it was it's a lot of just a lot of learning about how different vowels affect, you know, the formants, and well, not really affect the formants, how those interact with the formants, and how to use that to write better vocal music.
Fascinating.
So yeah, check out Voce Vista.
Sounds
Definitely.
good. There's some
Probably
more money.
expensive.
So, I guess sort of the relationship with technology and spectralism, where I guess, or what are some of the next steps for like the relationship between them, you know, or will things progress so much that it ends up just being not, I don't know, not worth it, or is it just all the same? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
AI sidebar.
yes. Eric knows where I go with this kind of question.
Literally every
AI.
single episode.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's
our
that
segment, yeah.
groundbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that literally applies to almost every domain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like live processing, I think is kind of the in thing, and has been for at least. I feel like that's kind of like been the new music thing for like the 2000s.
Yeah.
Is like live processing and, being able to manipulate timbre in that way in real time, and even be able to I'm into being able to do that like improvisationally,
Oh yeah.
is pretty cool.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you guys. What does music being live in person add to the experience?
Well, yeah. So with a lot of music concerts online, it's I think there's sort of like I guess initially I think there's like kind of like a disconnect. So for the performer, sort of that instantaneous feedback of whether something was good or bad is relegated to like text or
Right.
clapping emojis. Um, and then for the
Yeah.
listener, well, for the listener, half the time the audio is just garbage. But like I don't know, like it's really hard like finding the perfect balance for like vocals and stuff, like using instruments to sound as good as they do live across the internet. Like it's definitely a lot on our end to make sure that our sound comes out as clean as possible, but then even then for the listener there's like a lot of subtleties that you can kind of miss, like just body language or just I don't know, there's a lot of those things that are missed with yeah.
Okay, fascinating. So how does that apply then between music that's live and let's say we're in person, but between live generated sounds and pre-recorded sounds?
Well, I think with pre-recorded sounds there's definitely familiarity. Well, I guess it can be familiar if it's something familiar. But with I guess physical musicians seeing people, there's definitely that connection of like, oh, there's someone, there's like a presence doing this. And I guess if it's all done at the push of a button, there's sort of that element taken out of it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What is that element?
Well, yeah, Trevor, yeah.
And Trevor, feel free to jump in as well if you have any ideas.
So we're talking about like electroacoustic pieces that are like with a pre-recorded element versus live processing, or
yeah.
I mean, like going back to the idea of something being organic. It's definitely a lot easier to make it sound organic if it's all happening live. I feel like a lot of pieces that are like just a pre-recorded kind of backing track type thing, it can feel very separate unless like I remember there was a piece that this composer Sarah Corey that Eric and I know did for flute and electronics, that like it was just fixed electronics, but because she used flute sound in the electronic part, it sounded like it could have been live processed and it sounded very, very organic. But when it's just a fixed playback thing, it can feel kind of like stale or just like separate from the live part. And also, I mean, the mixing just has to be like exactly right. And that's true for live processing, I guess, too.
So you're saying that there's value in creating that immediacy in generating the music.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, also just to like, well, for our listeners far in the future, because, I'm sure we'll have listeners that are listening to this
30 years.
like 10 years.
30 years, okay.
So clearly.
This is during the COVID pandemic.
This has become stuff of legend.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that like even if it's like live streamed, like comparing like something that's live streamed or like in person, a live performance to like a recording, that kind of just brings out the like the human element of it, and that it's literally someone like expressing themselves or like committing their entire being in that moment into producing the music.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're just listening to a recording, I mean, a lot of the times it's like a bunch of people went into like, you know, polishing it and making it sound just like immaculate, and you know, in a bunch of different ways. And if it's in person or you know, if it's live, then all the kind of like the human flaws are there, and all of the like little variations and stuff are there, and that, I think that just like makes it seem a lot more human.
Oh yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that.
No, it's really interesting. Like you could have like a recording of, I don't know, Chicago, of, you know, this concert, and you can hear it, and you can have the best sound system possible, but I think there is, at the end of the day, going to be a difference than being there live as it was being recorded instead of recorded. It just it's like sort of a layer removed from the source of the sound.
Mm-hmm. So Eric, I know you know about shepherd tones, but Matt, if you encountered shepherd tones before,
aren't shepherd tones like two tones produced at the same time, like or more than one tune produced at the same time? I think
Google it real quick.
Isn't there a trombonist that we listen to that does this?
Maybe.
I think you're thinking of multiphonics.
German shepherds.
Yeah.
Hold on. This might blow my ears really quick. Shepherd tone is an audio illusion formed by overlaying separate tones separated by octaves that each rise fall. Okay, and repeat independently on one another. Okay, I did. Yeah, and a little.
Did you find a recording?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the first place I heard one of those was like on an episode of Magic School Bus.
They were
I'm pretty sure. I forget
the. Early.
I'm not sure, but
oh yeah,
some sound like that.
Blew your mind.
But that's something else that crops up in a lot of like spectral and microtonal music, specifically in the music of one of my favorite composers, Georg Friedrich Haas. He'll kind of imitate that effect a lot with like a bunch of like descending chromatic lines that, you know, kind of fade in and then fade out as they descend, or as they go up, because you have shepherd's tones going either way.
Yeah. So for our listeners, it creates the illusion that the pitch is continually rising or descending forever without actually rising or descending.
That's so weird. That's just like that's a weird phenomena.
Yeah. One of my favorite pieces by Haas, in Vain, and it's like an hour long, but a lot of it is based on that, and that I feel like that is one of the things that like creates tension in his music, because you're just kind of waiting for like, okay.
This goes back to that dominant and tonic relationship, you know. Sort of like a tension release, definitely.
Yeah.
So I guess where would like multiphonics fit on that scale? I guess it'd be sort of similar to.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, so one thing, I know Grisey used this in Les Espaces Acoustiques, but that's basically a ring modulation, I think. Because when you do a multiphonic, your frequency that you're singing and the frequency that you're playing get added together, and you're hearing the sidebands basically, right? Which are
go on.
Is that right?
Well, I was just gonna ask you to clarify what a ring modulation is. So Trevor, can you elaborate on what a ring modulation is?
Yeah, so a ring modulation is when you multiply two frequencies together, and then you get two sideband frequencies, which are the sum and the difference of the input frequencies.
How's that work?
Like acoustically.
Like, what do you mean?
When a mommy frequency and a daddy frequency love each other.
Right, yeah.
It's the stork, right?
So it's kind of related to amplitude modulation, which is when you have like a sine wave, and basically it's, you would just be turning the volume up and down very quickly from like silence to full volume, and if you do that fast enough, you start to hear the rate that you're turning the volume up and down as its own frequency.
The frequency.
And then that interacts with the actual frequency of the of the pitch to create as well. Yeah, two different side bands.
Cool.
That's pretty neat. That's I guess that's another example of spectralism, if you will.
Yeah, no, I mean it's dealing with like kind of mathematical manipulation of sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And doesn't Grisey and other composers employ multiphonics to create the sounds that they're recreating in their orchestral pieces?
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Oh, I made a woodwind instrument out of a stick of bamboo.
Oh, nice. I have a lot of bamboo near my house, so if you ever want to make some more.
And it sounds really cool, really, really cool. I just stick my bass clarinet mouthpiece on the top, and I put the holes at where the harmonic series nodes are within the tube, and it doesn't make a scale that I recognize, but it plays in tune.
I have to hear this now.
Let's hear it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just have to soak a reed.
I used to stick
It'll be a minute.
my trombone mouthpiece in like a bassoon, at the end of a bassoon. That'd work. Yeah. No, but yeah, trombones, you could definitely make some interesting sounds. Like, you ever try blowing in the bell of a trombone?
Oh, can you show us?
I can try. Yeah, let's do it. We're gonna have a concert tonight.
Yeah. Excuse you.
Hold on, let me get a mouthpiece going in.
Well, that's that.
Thank you, guys. That's
Wow. So can you do like lip slurs on that? Like, what does that sound like?
We'll see. Some tritone action. If you somehow forget your bell, you're not too at a loss,
All right, here's this.
It's a big stick.
Yeah, baby.
That actually sounds good. Dude, can I buy one?
Wow,
Let's
that
go.
sounds
That's
awesome.
great.
Wait, what's
It's a
the
bass clarinet.
what?
mouthpiece.
Yeah, what kind of mouthpiece is that?
It does.
Dude,
yeah.
that's
Yeah, it sounded a lot like
yeah,
a bass clarinet.
definitely. That's pretty sick though.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm pleased.
Yeah, that sounded way better than I thought it was gonna sound. I'm just kidding. It sounds really good.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't sound that promising. Oh yeah, I have a stick of bamboo, stick a mouthpiece on it.
Just cut some holes into it, you know.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Hey, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you like what you heard, there are a bunch of ways you can help us. You can share our podcast on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook. You can review us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. And tell your friends. Any final thoughts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple
I got
other
some
things I
thoughts.
wanted
Yeah.
to talk about if you guys have a minute. Well, just in the article, they talk about. So in the article, they talk about how there's a correlation between spectralism and modernism,
Hmm.
which modernism is defined by the present moment and specifically separating yourself from existing paradigms and traditions. And in the same way, spectralism is a separation from existing structures. So what that made me think about was psychedelics, actually. In the psychedelics are in the same. Do you see a corollary there?
So say what you. So modernism is about separating the self from
The past.
the world. Is that what you said? From the past.
From the past. Yeah. So it's a separation from existing structures and
Mhm.
traditions.
Yeah, like the kind of the dissolving of boundaries kind of thing. And yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
Hmm.
I was thinking because of the way that in a psychedelic experience you often have an experience of timelessness, of just the present going on and on forever and ever and ever, and that same sort of presentness is rooted from you've gotten rid of your pre-existing framework, so that the only experience that you can have is that of the present moment without any filters or
Yeah.
adjustments.
Yeah. I've always thought that spectralism is one of, if not the most like psychedelic forms of
Oh yeah, for
like,
sure.
classical music, along with like most of like contemporary classical music has that kind of bent to it, but especially spectralism, just the way it deals with slowly evolving forms and like limits
Right.
of perception
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah, cool. And like to me, spectralism specifically does that where other contemporary classical stuff does not. Like, sure, they're crazy. Oh, out there. Oh, look at all this dissonance and wild stuff we're doing. But to me, that's
Right.
not the core of the psychedelic experience. The core is that presentness and perpetual timelessness, which spectralism explores so centrally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I mean, just in like, the timelessness structure created by, these very slow moving things just, can totally correlate with that.
Did you guys know that Grisey was taught by Messiaen and also Stockhausen, Xenakis, and
Ah.
Ligeti?
I think I knew that. Yeah,
That's pretty
He was-
cool.
he
I
was
did not know that.
running around with all those
Pretty cool.
boys
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So no wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure he did a lot of like ear cam and all that stuff.
Yeah, what is that?
That's where a lot of those guys were.
Ear cam?
So ear cam is it was this or is this like center in Paris for experimental music, but like a lot of people like gave lectures there, like pretty sure Stockhausen and Ligeti at least did a lot of like research and like gave lectures there, like kind of at the forefront of electronic music for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So, have you guys listened to Periodes by
It's
Grisette?
been a little bit, but I've
Yeah.
heard bits here and there.
I just heard it for the first time today, and ooh golly. This one hit really home to me, this piece of music, because about halfway through he does this thing where there's like a single pitch, like a higher overtone that sustains very quietly and then sort of snowballs into a very aggressive dissonant sound, very chaotic, that as soon as it peaks cuts back down to just the one line, and it does that several times in quick succession.
Mm-hmm.
Now the reason this is so impactful for me is that when I was a kid I would occasionally be sick, very sick, and I would have fever dreams. And in my fever dreams as a kid, there was a recurring imagery that every time it was the same thing. It was a sensation that the best I could describe it is, do you know the feeling of like that Scotch tape with the matte texture?
Mm-hmm.
And running your finger across a perfectly smooth Scotch tape just forever, and that being analogous to the tone, this ringing tone that I would hear. That also I had the imagery of a faucet that's just turned on a little bit, so that has that little laminar flow that's dripping down, and you hear that. And it's so quiet and subtle in the background, just like the pitch in Periodes. And then there'd be like a little lump in the Scotch tape, a little nick, and it'd be like, uh-oh, what was that? And it would go back to the line. And then it would start to snowball and snowball until it was this like a chaotic, absolute madness in my mind. And then it would cut back. And I'd be back to just the single pitch, waiting.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome.
Wow.
I mean, not the being sick part, but
yeah, wasn't at the time. But it's so remarkable because what Grisette has portrayed in his music is this very particular, unusual internal experience that I had as a kid.
Yeah, it's I feel like music does that a lot. You can map something that was like created 50 years ago,
something relevant,
it seems like exactly onto some experience that like in your life that just like it fits so perfectly, because it's like universal in some way.
Absolutely.
And I guess you could say that, like, imagining that stream of water still would just be natural sound.
Yeah. And that all these sensations were arising within my organism as a kid. And so this actually ties into one last thing I want to talk about, which is that Grisey died at age 52 of an aneurysm.
Wow.
Did you guys know that?
Right.
No, I didn't. That's
I do
really
that.
young.
Yeah. Apparently he had like a crazy work ethic, and was just like
It's so
going
weird
all the time.
how there's
Mhm.
like people like that.
Yeah, I
that just,
believe it.
like, they don't have an off button, you know?
Yeah.
But I wonder if maybe the psychological state that could have led to that is maybe inextricably tied to the music that he's creating.
Sort of as like a representation of sort of the emotions that he was dealing with sort of this mentality of constants.
Yeah, or maybe even not emotions so much as internal experiences, such as my fever dream.
Yeah, I mean, just like very, very intense and almost like hallucinogenic
I mean, this is.
experiences.
I mean, that also like, what year did he die?
98, I think.
98. I mean, but I mean, so he was. I mean, I guess like having all these new sort of expressions of that, like, I don't know, that's kind of a interesting like mantle to hold of just like all these like sort of sounds and ideas that were really, really fresh, and I'm not sure how it was taken in 98 or like sort of that era, but like that's, I could see if you have like this passion for these sounds and these things that need to be written, and you have like a really big passion, and then I don't know what was big in 1998, you know, maybe like early Taylor Swift. No, I don't know. But like, you know what I mean? But
Well, sure, comparing to pop
yeah,
music, but
Yeah, I mean, I think Spectralism was kind of all the rage.
yeah.
Like pretty quickly after it happened.
They were writing articles and everything about it.
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he was very respected in his time. But to me, Spectralism is such it offers a very direct view into infinity. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much that your mind can, so many directions your mind can go in if you're trying to encompass this thing, and and here's Grisey at the very forefront trying to pioneer this concept.
Yeah, it reminds me of that whatever that mathematician was who like went insane from working on problems involving infinity.
Yeah, just peering into the infinite and just being like, oh shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely believe that. I'd love to see a reference to that because that sounds super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of how spectralism like relates to infinity is just the idea of fractals.
Yeah.
And the idea that like you can have an instrument like playing things in the overtone series, and then the instrument's timbre itself will be related on, will be composed of the overtone series, and it's like everything kind of exists at different. The same thing can exist at different scales, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when you start playing with fractals, you start to get into, like, if you consider your mind as an information processing system, you start to get into layers of infinite information, right? It's kind of just this overload of information. And so I personally totally see a connection between that and maybe having an aneurysm.
Yeah.
Just having like all these thoughts and on top of that, like a crazy big work ethic, like that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not unprecedented too. If you look at Charles Ives, in his life had a couple or several in his life had several incidents where he and his family described them as a heart attack, but it's maybe supposed that it's more of a psychological thing that happened to him. And after one of them, he basically stopped composing, and then several years later, after another one, he comes downstairs and he's got tears in his eyes, and he says to his wife, "I can't do it anymore. I can't write any more music."
Man.
That's very intense. Sort of like focal dystonia or something, being able to play an instrument and then just one day sort of waking up and just like not having the ability to play it anymore.
Jeez, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it is really weird. Yeah, they say it's a lot due to like doing habits wrong and like sort of like kind of playing on autopilot. That your brain like slowly, I guess maybe without you even knowing it, like forgets what it's doing, to where then eventually one day you just can't do the fundamental thing of just simple notes.
Oh, kind of a form of dementia, maybe.
Maybe so. Yeah. I'm not too sure of how it all stems from, but yeah, that'd be something to look into.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Kind of a dark note to end on.
Now here's some music.
Yes, I just wanted to talk about a couple more things. How about aneurysms?
but I guess like it's also weird too, isn't it? Like some people with like perfect pitch will eventually like their ears will kind of go out of tune to pitch, and then like a lot of, or I guess if your idea of perfect pitch changes somehow with age, like it's kind of gone.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, all things change in time.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the world is better for having had the experience.
That's why with spectralism you can really appreciate the now, the modern, the modernization of just being in the present.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a celebration of being in the present.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a more positive note. Awesome.
Way to loosen stuff up, you know.